Hi everyone, it's Kino here. Welcome to this Ashtanga tune-up series. This class is all about Marichasana A position. There are so many ways to work the foundations of this asana, so let's see if we can get into what the core elements are really about. So Marichasana A involves one hip being closed or like in a half squat, and the other hip or the other leg being extended so that we're going to fold forward over the extended leg. Then the idea with Marichasana A is that your torso slides forward, so we actually move into a hyper hip flexion on the side of the bent knee. Now, the second half of the asana is happening with the shoulders. So your shoulders internally rotate, and this allows you to bind your hands around the back. Okay, so now you understand what the asana is. Now let's get down into the nitty-gritty of how we're going to tune this asana up. So first thing, when we start off in Dandasana position, or our seated position, from which all the asanas really emanate from, the first thing to look out for is what's happening with the lower back. If your lower back is hunched and rounded as we sit in the seated position, when you bend your knee, it's only going to round and hunch more, dumping more weight into your lower back, taking you further away from the asana. So if this is the reality of your Dandasana position, I recommend that you grab a blanket and then you sit your hips up on the blanket, and this will help you pivot just a little bit forward into a good Dandasana position. This over time will increase flexibility, and what's nice about the blanket is after a few months, you can change the height and just get it be a little lower, a little lower, a little lower as you develop more flexibility. Now from here, let's bend one knee, and then you'll find that, well, even if you started off in that hunch position just by sitting up on the blanket, that began to pivot the pelvis enough forward so that when you bend this knee, you don't fall back. So this is helping keep the pelvis just a little bit elevated. Next, when you fold forward, you're thinking about how can you bring your torso away from your thigh without, this is important, your knee flopping out to the side in external rotation. So if we think about how are we going to get the torso forward, then this knee has to stay activated following the line, right knee over the right foot, right knee aligned with the right hip. Not too much wide, not too much in. It's sort of stable on its own. Then as the torso moves forward, there's a moment when the hip will come off of the towel or off of the blanket or even off of the floor. You want to let that happen. So the forward fold element of this asana is probably the most important aspect. The navel draws in, and as you fold forward, your hip is moving back and away. So this could be the foundation of what we're working with in the asana. However, we're going to add in a shoulder bind or a movement in the shoulder that will help you find out how to connect the shoulders into the work of the torso. Let's bring it back. Now, when you're reaching with your arms, we want to find internal rotation of the shoulder, not external rotation of the shoulders. We're internally rotating. And when we think about that internal rotation, the humerus slides lightly forward, and this will give you the space to be able to reach around. All right, so let's give that a try. So we can reach forward, and then you're going to find that internal rotation, right? So we're here, we're thinking, how can I internally rotate my shoulder, right? How do I internally rotate the shoulders? The shoulder rolls forward. The collarbone stays broad. We reach around the back. Now, maybe the hands don't bind each other. That's all right. You can take a strap and reach the strap around. So I recommend that if you're going to reach the strap, take the hand that's not wrapped around and then use that to kind of glide the strap in place. Hold on to the strap and hold on to it firmly, rolling your both shoulders forward and down. Then as you inhale, a long deep breath in, stabilize the legs so the left heel roots down into the ground. You're stabilizing the pelvis. Exhale, fold. And as your torso folds forward, it's going to pull the right hip off the ground, stabilize with the shoulders so the knee doesn't move off, and at the same time, pull back with the hip. Good. We'll stay one more breath. Then inhale, we lift the center of the chest up. Exhale here, remove the arm, remove your strap, and we return to seated. Now let's explore without the blanket. So if we move the blanket away, and then we find our Marichasana A position, which we're going to enter through Dandasana. So we bend the left knee. Now the biggest mistake people make from here is that they start to try to bind their hands without folding forward. So remember, the fold forward is really the essence of the asana. So we don't worry about the bind from the beginning. We stabilize the whole body, and you're feeling your right leg grounded. We're going to move into that hyper hip flexion on the left side where the torso slides down. We get the elements of the forward fold established. You could stay here. Maybe it's not right for you to bind your hands. If you have a shoulder injury, for example, example, or you're feeling that for whatever reason, it's just not going to feel right to take the hands back, we can stay here. Notice, left hip is off the ground, but the left hip is not popping over to the side. So the left hip stays pulling back, even though it's a little off the ground. It's almost like in a half squat. Then, let's see if we can find that internal rotation position. So we're reaching through internal rotation, reaching the hands around the back. We can bind the fingers, or you can hold onto your wrist, what feels better for you. The gaze is forward, and then the navel draws in. So we inhale, we lift, and then exhale, fold. And you want to slide down so the torso descends, and we get that feeling of a deep forward fold. At the same time, the pelvis moves back and away. So we're thinking about counterbalancing that forward fold with pulling back with the left side. Now, we do not want to, again, attach the shoulder to the knee and then dump everything over to the side. Neither do you want to sit back and just kind of hang there and not really go anywhere. You want to come forward enough so the torso has the space to descend, and then pull the knee back. So we're getting a hyper hip flexion. Good. Inhale, we lift the chest up. Exhale there. Release. Come on back to the center line, and then we can come to seated. Okay, so if we're thinking about what the foundation of Marichasana A really is, we're thinking about a forward fold, a hyper hip flexion, and internal rotation of the shoulders. So we're thinking about how can the torso slide between the thighs, and how do the shoulders really facilitate and support that motion. This is a very important forward fold that is really good for opening the hips, releasing the back, and it's a good counterbalance to any kind of lower back pain that comes from the inability to relax or release your back muscles. If you're looking forward in the Ashtanga Yoga series and you're working on Supta Kurmasana or putting your legs behind your head, Marichasana A is probably the most important preparatory posture that you can work on to really do that more complex and challenging asana with ease and flow later. So put in the work in Marichasana A and figure out what best supports your practice. Take away the idea that you have to bind, take away the idea that you have to perform the asana, and just feel your connection into breath, body, and mind. Feel where your hips are, feel where your shoulders are, feel where your forward fold is, feel what's right for you each day of the practice, and take that inspiration to keep practicing every day.